All right, my friends, it is another episode of Remodelers on the Rise. I'm your host, Kyle Hunt, and I have Pasi Verimo. I did it perfect, didn't I?
You did. Hi, everybody.
Pasi Verimo with W and OD Homes. And so Pasi is part of the Remodelers Community Facebook group. He's been on there for a decent amount of time and just kind of followed the podcast and followed the Facebook group. If you go to remodelerscommunity.com, you can join the Facebook group. I also got to know Pasi a little bit. He signed up for Remodelers Autopilot not too long ago. So we're staying in touch with previous clients through email and social media that way. If you go to remodelersautopilot.com, you can learn about that and you can be smart like Pasi and join that. It's only $1 to try it out. But the reason we're talking today is I made a post in the Facebook group last week that said, I'm doing a show on June 28th, and I would like to bring on a guest and kind of do a live coaching call. I've done these in the past. Does anybody want to volunteer to be my guest and go through some of the challenges you're experiencing in your business, talk through it, get some feedback? And Pasi, you threw your hand up and said, I'm brave, I'll do it. Is that how it went?
That's how it went. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So here you are. And I was asking
yeah.
you yesterday, I said, what does the W and OD stand for in your business name? Tell us what that is.
Yeah. So, back in the day, there was a rail line that connected the western suburbs of Washington, D.C., uh, and it was called W&OD Rail. And since then, they've converted it into a multi-use um, path, so biking, running,
Gotcha.
and there's even a bridle path for horses. So it's a huge treasure in the area. It's like 45 miles long. So
Gotcha.
so
So
I've
W and
spent my
OD, Washington and Old Dominion.
Washington and Old Dominion.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now, Pasi, if I was talking to you 6 years ago, what would I have found you doing 6 years ago for work?
yeah. So I was in IT world. I was managing some hosted platforms for companies, so virtual call centers, virtual um, security services, those types of
Mm.
things for large international companies.
And then you said, that's not fun. I've been doing some remodeling on the side. I've been remodeling my home. I kind of like this. I'm going to look into something totally different. And you started researching franchise companies, or catch us up on kind of how you arrived where you're at.
Yeah. So one of the things that kind of a dissatisfaction in working kind of in a virtual world is that when you come home, you never really have something to point and say, "Hey, I did that." So
Yeah.
yeah, hey, look at the spreadsheet that I built. Anyway, I I was sort of drawn uh, to woodworking, remodeling. Started looking at some handyman franchises, and then decided against them and went on my own. Started with
Hmm.
a brand called Hammer and Mop, and then about a year ago we decided that we want to shift our focus more toward interior remodels, kitchens, baths, basements.
Gotcha. And here you are. So you've been able to, over the last 4 years, you kind of started the handyman side, and then now, okay, I'm going to work on interior remodeling and focus on that. You're around $600,000 in revenue, aspiring towards more, getting up there into the million mark. And you're
Yeah,
as you're getting involved. So I think it's helpful for people to hear the background of where you were,
yeah,
originally from Finland, and then in the IT world, and then I'm done with the IT world, started getting into the handyman side, and now remodeling. And what you were kind of talking about off air is, there's just a lot that I'm still learning. I'm still trying to really dial in how I'm approaching my estimating and my proposals, what I'm charging for my work. And that's kind of going to be what we want to focus the conversation on is, how do I charge what I know I need to charge? How do
yeah.
I charge the markup I need? How do I approach pricing and presenting that to clients? Anything you'd add to that before I ask some questions?
No, yeah, no, that's really the challenge. It's like there's what I need to charge to make money, and then there is balancing that against what customers are willing to pay.
Hmm.
And it's always finding the sweet spot between those two is what the
Time out. The
um,
first, so the
cost
first part of that,
yeah,
the second part you said is what customers are willing to pay. What was the first part?
what I need to make money
Yes.
is
Yeah. So you're
yeah,
looking at it, and I think sometimes where I like to start with this is getting very clear with what do I need to make? What does my markup or what I'm charging need to be? Before we worry about is is the customer willing to pay X? Sometimes when we start with that of like, well, I'm talking to some customers that can't afford this. Well, you need to market and go find some new customers, right? There's a market that can pay that. You may not be talking to them right now, and there's some balance there, especially where you're at, where you're getting your business up and running, where you may need to take a certain project at a lower markup. You
Yeah.
may need to be a little more creative with that. You're early in your business. You can't be too picky and choosy right now. But again, where I like to start is, what do I need to make, in the business? Now, when you were talking a little bit to me yesterday, where you started to go down the road of on that is, well, I was following Rob Bauer's Facebook page, and I don't know if you chatted with Rob too.
Yeah, I've
Cool.
been to one of Rob's workshops too. So
Excellent. Oh, and cool.
yeah,
The one where he takes you to the beach and you guys eat and talk business.
that's right.
Wow, wow. So Rob's a friend and colleague in the industry, and so you mentioned that, and you heard from Rob. Hey, 1.67 markup, 40% gross profit margin, and you start reading others and reading even the history of our business. There's a little bit of a golden standard of 40% gross profit margin, 1.67 markup that's out there. Now, that may be where you need to be at, but you started also going down the road of, well, I kind of figured out what my overhead is, and I kind of figured that after X, Y, and Z, I need $5,000 a week coming in. Tell me where your mind is when you were sharing that with me yesterday.
So yeah, I mean, you start thinking, how much I want to pay myself, and you can sort of then work it out backward, work it backwards as to kind of come up with an aspirational number,
Hmm.
that, I should be paying myself this to per week. And that, but then you got to think, can I achieve it with a single crew? Do I need multiple crews, multiple projects going on at the same
Yeah,
time?
and we got to be careful with that first.
Yeah,
Starting with the foundation of how much do I need to kind of charge and how I need to make. So I'm gonna share this and just go through this real quick. So one of the ways to approach this is let's do just a little markup calculation. So if I were to say I need a few pieces of information from you. And for those of you listening to the podcast, you don't see the screen, but you can click on the YouTube version of it, and other people are seeing my screen. And it's just a little markup calculation. This is based on volume-based markup, and let's just kind of start there to kind of see where we're at. If I were to say, Pasi, what is your total sales going to be in 2022? What number would you put in there?
let's say 650.
Okay, 650. You want to be at 800 or 900, but we're halfway through the
Yeah.
year. You think that's a pretty realistic number?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
If I went into your QuickBooks and I said, all right, pull up your profit and loss statement for 2022 so far, you'd have a number there. If I said, tell me about some of your upcoming work and how much you've sold, when I add those two up and kind of consider where we're at in the year, this is pretty realistic, 650,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, he's got his calculator out.
Huh.
Okay. What were you calculating there?
No, I was just okay. Go
Okay.
ahead.
All right. And then the next thing we need three pieces of information. We need total sales, we need your overhead expenses, and we need your goal for net profit. So as far as your overhead expenses go, this would be anything on your profit and loss statement that is in the overhead section. We would include your salary in this number as well. So how much are you wanting to pay yourself this year? Wanting. I know you said that,
Yeah.
sometimes you're not paying as much as you want to be.
So if we go in the 120 range this year.
120,000. Okay. So if you have a salary of 120,000 and then other overhead expenses, marketing, legal, software, workers' comp, liability insurance, advertising, travel, meals, entertainment, what would be an approximate number of overhead that you're expecting to spend in 2022?
It's probably in the 50 range, probably.
Okay. All right. We'll put in $50,000 there.
Yeah.
And then let's say you want a goal of $60,000 of net profit. at the end of it. Okay. So what this is doing, and again, it's just a good starting point. What this is saying is if you have $650,000 of sales, if your overhead expenses are $170,000, if you have a net profit goal, let's round that up to 65,000. You have a net profit goal of 10%. That's after you've paid yourself a $120,000 salary. What that tells us is the calculation, it takes total sales divided by cost of goods sold. And what it spits out is you need to have a 1.57 markup across the board in order for those numbers to happen. Okay. So before we get into, well, how many crews am I going to have and how much money do I need coming in a week, this or that, this is a way that we can kind of wrap our head around one of the ways we look at what we need to charge. Okay, now let's play with this for a second. Let's say your sales come in at 750,000 and everything else stays the same. What's going to happen to your markup?
It should go down.
Correct. Right, I have more sales coming in. I still have the same overhead expenses. I still have the same net profit goal. And my markup just went from the 1.57 down to 1.46. Now let's move it back to 650. Let's say you just spitballed me and said $50,000 on overhead expenses, but it's actually $75,000. When you start adding the, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. If your overhead expenses go up another 25,000 and everything else stays the same, your markup's going to need to go up. In this case, it comes out at 1.67%. And this is, again, you're paying yourself. Go ahead.
No, there you go. There's your 1.67.
Yeah. So the way I always approach it is like everybody's markup if they do this calculation based on their sales, based on their overhead expenses, based on their net profit goals, everybody's number is going to be different.
Yeah.
Is there a best practice in our industry that if you're at a pretty professional rate and approaching it from value-based or volume-based markup, and you have a bit of overhead expense built out, et cetera, a good shooting point is 1.67 markup, which turns into a 40% gross profit. Yeah, that's a pretty good route to go. But what I'm telling you is if your numbers are here, and let's say it is 50,000, you only need to be at 1.57 in order to make that happen. So it's good to kind of wrap our head around that. Now, the risk in this is if you don't bring in 650,000, then your net profit's going to suffer. If you end up bringing 600,000 in, and you have a 1.57 markup, your net profit is going to be the first thing that gets hit. The other thing that we need to take into consideration is if you have a 1.57 markup across the board on all of your costs, you have $10,000 of costs on that bathroom project times 1.57. Your selling price is $15,700. You're expecting gross profit of $5,700, correct?
Yep.
Right. Now, if you have slippage on that project, if you had quoted 20 hours on that phase and it took you 30, if you quoted a plumber to come in there and do their work for $2,000 and it cost you $3,000, you have slippage, and that can eat into your gross profit. So that is another thing to consider. You heard me kind of say really clearly of like, how confident are you in that 650,000? That comes out to $54,000 a month, $160,000 a quarter. The big thing I want to know is, okay, if we pulled up your P&L, here we are getting close to the halfway point of the year. Where are your sales at? I'd want them to be in the 300s if we're going to be on pace for that. So that's one of the first things, is to kind of wrap our head around where do I need to be at? Where do I need to be at? So a couple other things that come to play there. One, how organized is your profit and loss statement? Like if you go into QuickBooks, is it pretty solid, and do you understand it well?
It's solid.
Okay.
I understand it well. I don't, I need to look at it more. So.
Okay. What about job costing? So if you had a 1.60 markup on it, you could probably tell me, okay, I'm expecting to make X amount of gross profit on this project. Are you watching carefully what the actual gross profit is?
We're not there yet. I think we got the information now where we are in a position to start doing it, but
okay. Meaning our labor hours that we're working are going towards that specific project. Meaning I have a bill come in from the plumber for $2,000 and we're applying it to that project. So we're able to see what our costs are.
we have the information. I think it needs to be there needs to be some effort to look at it. With Co-Construct and QuickBooks, we should be in a position to get that
to see the
easier.
expected
Yeah,
versus
to see
actual
it.
gross
Yeah,
profit. Good. So that's
yeah,
a huge step. So what I just kind of put you through there is, I want you to look a little harder at that markup calculator and kind of see, what does my overhead expenses look like? What is my net profit goal? How's my sales goal look? I want you to once and for all say, doggone it, I am going to know exactly where I'm at on the job I just finished. We're going to do a very clear look at our job costing on that. And any projects I have going on right now, I'm going to be paying attention to what my expected versus actual is on that project and on any projects I have going on. That's really important to make sure that that is closely watched, because the other big thing is, once you start being confident and, okay, I need to charge this, when you're watching your job costing, it helps you become a better estimator. All of a sudden you realize, I know why I had slippage there. I didn't put enough hours in. Or, you know what? I know I have slippage here. I forgot to include that, and now I'm going to eat that cost. Right? So job costing, you've heard me talk about job costing before, right?
I think I have. Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's a
We
recurring
need
theme.
Yes, it's a recurring theme, and there's a reason for that. So there's a little bit of coaching, a little bit of direction on markup, on watching our job costing. I want to capture maybe a question or two you have related to that as a follow-up or a takeaway, and then I want to talk about, how are we presenting our price to our client, because that was the other big thing you wanted to hear. Do you have any question on what we've covered so far, or even a takeaway?
No, that's good.
Okay. What's a takeaway that you were reminded of, or that you need to work more on?
Well, I think I need to revisit my my overheads to have a fresh look at.
Mm-hmm.
What are my recurring costs?
Mm-hmm. Good. And get clear with how much that is and what that looks like. Even, you threw out there, I want to make $120,000 from the business. And, when you mentioned that earlier, that's not what you're doing right now, correct?
No.
Okay. Now, next question. What is your markup right now?
So right now, it's in the 50, 60 range.
Okay. Okay. So it's already, so if you would have told me, Kyle, I have a 1.35 markup, that's how I'm pricing my work. I'm taking my cost times 1.35. I'm doing $600,000 of revenue. I just don't even have enough to pay myself. That would make a lot of sense to me, because you just don't have enough gross profit there. But if you're up in the 1.5s or 1.6 and your sales are up in that 600 range, and you don't have enough to pay yourself a salary, that, to me, what that points to is, I'm really wanting to look at your job costing. We must have a good amount of slippage going on in order for you not to be able to pay yourself. How much have you been paying yourself?
I'm not ready to talk about it.
Okay. Not sharing that
in the public. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So that's fair enough. So I think that's something I would zero in on, because the sales volume and the markup that you're doing should allow you to be getting close to 80, 90, 100, 110,000 without you sweating it too much. And the fact that maybe that's not comfortable even before that, there's something else amiss here. Either bad estimating, where we have a lot of slippage, or we have a lot of slippage because our actual is coming in much higher than our projected. So we really need to dig into the numbers there and kind of uncover, all right, what needs to change in order for there to be more gross profit dollars to pay yourself what you want to be paid, and to still have some net profit going on at the end. Does that resonate?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm really interested in digging into that a little bit more, of trying to understand where that money's at. Now, let's talk about the other side of things, which is, how you're presenting this to homeowners. Right now, how are you kind of putting your pricing in front of folks and approaching that?
Sure. Let's see if I share my screen.
Yeah, if you select if you want to show an example, select the window you want, and then I can add it to our live stream here.
Let's see.
And I can sing in the meantime while you're clicking that, if you want me to, sing.
And I guess you didn't get the files yet, so
Yep. So down at the bottom, it should say share, and then you can kind of select the window you want, and then I can
Okay.
add it to the stream.
Security settings are.
Ah, that might be a big problem then. Yeah. So no. So let's call an audible, and let's not worry about
Yeah.
sharing your screen because it'll probably make you have to restart it. No worries. So
Yeah.
describe to me how, if I'm a customer, if I'm a client of yours, what are you putting in front of me as far as how you're presenting your price?
So I've been doing fixed price contracts.
Okay.
It breaks down the scope of work um, at fairly good level of detail. So plumbing, framing, drywall, job setup, disposal.
Okay.
Um, so it's looks like I may be able to share something.
Okay.
I don't know if it did it come.
No, it doesn't seem to be
Okay,
popping
never
up there.
mind.
No worries. Yep.
Anyway, so yeah, so in lately I've been using Co-Construct. Um, so basically I go through sort of what you described is, look at the scope of work, break it down into different tasks, estimate how many hours it's going to take, what the material costs are going to be, and I can then put my markups. Um, I have my kind of preset markups,
Okay.
and then I can adjust them as I need to.
Okay. So,
Um,
so that's on
so
your end. You're on your spreadsheet or in CoConstruct. You've got all the details, scope of work. You've got your cost there, and then you have your markup next to that, which
right.
gives us the selling price. And then if I'm a client, what am I seeing? What's in front of me?
So what you're gonna so for instance, a recent bathroom project is a master bathroom remodel. Um, so it's a fixed price contract, but then it also has allowances for certain items like tile,
Okay.
vanity, um, you know, and so they see the main price, which was I think uh, around $45,000,
Okay.
and then I think 15 of that was for allowances.
Gotcha.
So the labor, the thin set, the framing, all that is sort of lumped into one big number. Customer doesn't see that,
Okay.
but then their allowances for kind of the furnishings.
Okay. And then so on something like that, if it's a $45,000 project, and when you add up all the allowances of about $15,000, that's already included in the 45,000, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So let's say my allowance for tile is 5,000 that the customer sees, but I have
Yep.
my markup applied to that, so I do get something on the
Yep.
materials as well.
So if you had a 1.60 markup on that, what we would look at is you'd have about $28,000 in cost times 1.6 equals just under $45,000. That's kind of how that comes out. Does that
So
sound
yeah,
correct?
so on this particular one, um, we are so total was I'm looking at my spreadsheet here.
Sure.
Uh, so we are total cost was uh, rounded up to 31,
Okay.
selling price 47.
Okay.
So 31 divided by 47. Yeah. So it's a 30, 35, 34% gross margin on that.
Margin, good, good. So what you just did there is you took your total cost divided by your selling price, and it spit out 38%. That is a gross margin. That is a margin number. And what that equates to is a 1.61 markup. There's a difference between margin and markup. If you want a table that explains the difference between markup and margin, you can email Bailey, my employee and marketing director, Bailey at remodelersontherise.com. She'd be happy to send you the markup versus margin spreadsheets. So, in that case, what we're looking at there is about $17,000 of gross profit. That is a good, healthy markup. Now, when I look at those allowances, is that $15,000? Are those numbers? Let's say one of them is the vanity, like you mentioned. When I look under vanity and I see $1,000 for an allowance next to the vanity, is that the actual cost that you're going to kind of have for them, or does that include markup already in that?
No, so the allowances are the actual cost,
Okay.
as I mentioned, and the markup is buried into the big 40 number.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again,
So if it
just
goes, if the vanity goes over the allotted amount, then I'll charge them the difference.
okay. So again, just getting clear with how you're doing it. We want to work people through the design and project development process so that we try to squash most of those allowances before we kind of sign a contract. Right. So that's kind of a bigger picture thought. But just in what you're describing, you basically have a 1.6 or so markup on your costs. You're looking at about $17,000 of gross profit on this project. If I'm the homeowner, one, I know what the selling price is, what I'm paying is about 47,000, and I have a series of allowances that we need to decide on tile, and we need to decide on this and that and the other, and hopefully that comes in pretty close. And from a homeowner standpoint, if I have a problem with that 47,000, I'm going to maybe want to talk to you about it. But you're
Mhm.
able to break down for me, well, 15,000 of that are in all these allowances that we're going to work through. And then in addition to that, that is our, fixed price quote for you to make all of this happen, to make this happen on time, to make this happen on budget, to deliver to you a great finished product and a pretty stress-free remodeling process. We're going to make sure we take care of job site cleanliness. You're going to love our team that we have on site. We put a lot of focus on communication. You're going to be able to log into a program called Co-Construct, where we do our daily logs, where we show our schedule, what's coming up. We're going to do a fantastic job for you on this. So you hear what I'm selling there. I'm selling there, right? I'm talking
Yeah.
about our benefits. I'm justifying why you're going to see what you're paying me as a value, Mr. and Miss Homeowner. So there's that. Go ahead and comment on that.
No, I just said you just described WNOD homes.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So again, the way you're doing it there, there's nothing wrong or that's jumping out at me. I'm very curious on that project. Let's say you sign that project and it actually happens. Are you actually bringing in $17,000 of gross profit or not? Something tells me we've got a lot of slippage and we need to shore that up and patch that up so that we're much more profitable, so that you can be earning what you want to be earning and should be earning for all of your hard work and dedication and experience you're giving clients, right?
Yeah.
Now, the
Yeah,
other
I
thing
think,
that
yeah.
go ahead, please.
No, it's like your comment earlier today. It's like time and timeliness, and that's erodes sales and erodes margins. So
Mm,
um,
yeah, the thing I mentioned of just time kills deals, right? If things are
yeah,
just
time. Yeah,
dragging on and on,
yeah,
things are going to just. And the other one that I posted this morning said, "Know your numbers."
I
That
saw
one was
that.
for you. That one was for you too, my
Yeah.
friend. Right. So the other thing that I would have you take a look at, because you mentioned it to me when we talked yesterday, is right now you are doing volume-based markup. You are doing one fixed fee, price for it. And you've heard chatter about the way other people are doing it. There's capacity-based markup. You don't need to worry about that right now. But then there's also what you had mentioned of you've interviewed Michael Anschel a couple times. What is this COPE, cost of project execution? What does that look like? So if you just type in, you can go to YouTube, or I'm sure if Bailey's watching this, she might even put it right in the comments on the Facebook group. But type in Kyle Hunt, Michael Anschel, Remodelers on the Rise. It'll pop up our recent conversation on it. Because the other route you could go here is you need to be very clear still with what your overhead is and what that looks like. But Michael has a different way of presenting this, where he shows the cost and opens it up and see all the costs that is part of this project. And then down below, there's 6 or 8 different line items that talks about the cost of project execution. One of those line items is overhead. That's going to cost you $6,242. Another one is
Hmm.
profit. That's going to cost you $5,622. And then the other one is ordering, procuring, checking, delivering materials. Another one is project management. Another one is, ongoing accounting and coordination of permitting, da da da. And when you add up all 6 or 8 of those, that's going to add up to what your gross profit needs to be on that project. Does that make sense as a crash course of that?
Yeah.
So that would be another way you could look at it. It changes the conversation a little bit. It looks a little bit different and still has a similar result.
Yeah, no, that more and more, I think, going to that kind of a approach saves times on estimating. I mean, if you can address the, I need to make money, and here's how much money I need to make on this project, then everything else is, kind of open.
Yeah.
Or if it's
And
agreed ahead of time.
yeah, and dividing that into those 6 or 8 different categories, it just hits and presents differently
Yeah.
than otherwise. So I would encourage you or others who are listening to this to maybe look up that episode. What other things are you kind of stuck on right now, or that you're kind of, boy, I just don't know how to do this, or I'm not sure how I'm doing that? Anything else come to mind?
I think it's the kind of the sales process I need to fine tune in terms of, initial meetings always go well, but then it's the um, finding the time to do the estimates and
Yeah.
keeping the customer engaged and warm
Yeah.
is
Are you
is,
are
is
you
another.
charging for design and project development at all?
So I'm working toward that. Lately, the big projects I haven't worked with some of our design partners.
Okay.
Um, I won't even get engaged until they have a design for a bigger project. If it's standard, 5x7 whole bathroom, there's no mystery. I can give you a price on that. But if it's
Hmm.
a
So,
basement
so
that's unfinished, yeah,
two things right now. What you can give me, even for that simple one, is a free estimate, is a
yeah,
ballpark range based on
yeah,
your project, based on my experience, based on projects that we've done that are similar. Your project's going to range anywhere from here to here. So even on a simple, straightforward one that you talked about, you could still say, so there's your free estimate. Now, in order to get to more of a detailed number and a detailed scope of work and walking you through all of the design, all of the final selections, all of the upfront work that it takes to do the project well, we charge $500 for that service. By the way, if you go forward with us, that $500 will be applied to your final payment.
okay,
So if you
yeah,
if you haven't been doing that at all, that's kind of where you can start with that. There's something different about saying I offer free estimates based on my years of
yeah,
experience and da da da. It's going to range from here to here. It's going to range anywhere from 50,000 to 35,000. I even put the higher number first. You hear that?
yeah,
So they really remember that. And then our next step in our process is our design and project development. And here's what that looks like. Here's what that costs, and here's how it works. So somebody, I mean, I'm total respect to you for you're one, brave to come on the show. Thank you. Number two, this is all new. This is all new. 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, you were doing something totally different. And then you spent a few years really honing and working on the handyman model and realized, you know what? There's pros and cons to that, but I'm realizing that my team and myself, we do better on these bigger projects and we enjoy that work better. That's what you told me yesterday, and that's the case. And now you're really
yeah,
grappling with, okay, I'm starting to get my markup figured out. I'm getting some detailed scope of work going. I'm getting co-construct going, so we're running things more organized. Yes, Kyle, I hear you about the job cost. I'm going to take that seriously. I'm going to get that in place. And then you brought up the sales process. You just start by collecting something in exchange for the work and the service you're offering for design and project development. When you walk away from that, offering a free estimate and then talking about the value of the design and project development, and you walk away with a $400 check, boom, things are different in your business. Because now you realize I just sold them on the value of design and project development. Okay.
yeah,
So I have a course called Charging for Design and Project Development that would probably be perfect for you to walk through, that talks about the structure of it, how to approach it. For those of you listening, if you go to remodellersontherise.com, you can click on that course. Pasi, for you being brave today, I'm giving you free access to that. And you just won yourself a Charging for Design and Project Development free access. And I will send that to you because that's what's going to build your
yeah,
confidence and clarity on how to approach the sales process. Working with designers and outside designers, that's a good first start. What I want to see you do there is, even if it's an outside designer, let's incorporate them under the umbrella of W&OD Homes. We have
yeah,
a design partner that we work with, and for $2,500, here's what we're going to do. Boom, 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 boom. And it's not just design, it's the project development. It's walking people through all of those details, all of those selections, all of the upfront work. And you need to charge for design and project development so you have enough time to do it well. Right now, you're doing it for free and you're barely able to keep up because nobody's saying no to a free detailed estimate. Sure, I would love for you to do all
Yeah.
those hours and hours of work in exchange for me having no skin in the game, right?
Yeah.
So I asked something else of like anything else. You mentioned the sales process. There's a few maybe first steps and a little push towards that. Plus, you got a free course out of it. That's cool.
That's awesome. Thank
Cool.
you.
What's a takeaway or two that you've had from our conversation here?
I, I yeah, the charging for estimates has been,
Careful. You offer free estimates, charging
free
for
estimates
design
for
and detailed
design
project development.
yeah,
Because those words that changes in your mind.
yeah,
Fair enough.
that I
Yes, that. Yep.
that is what I've been grappling with, and I think, yeah, you sometimes in my head I think, oh, it has to be thousands of dollars, but I think even a couple $100 is not insurmountable for a lot of people, but it does qualify the customer.
It absolutely does. If they hand you,
how serious are they? Yeah.
absolutely, if they hand you a check for that, you have sold. They're not handing that to you if you haven't sold them on the value of that. And no,
Yeah.
we don't need to start with charging $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000. No, you need to walk before you can run. If
Yeah.
I wanted to get in shape and I haven't been in the gym in 6 months, yeah, the guy could put me through the ringer and just about kill me, or he starts by getting me going. He starts by doing some small things. We have some success that day. I come back the next day. Similarly with design and project development, start with something small, 250
Yeah.
bucks. And in that course, you're going to see several different examples of, there's the thing they sign. There's how I structure it. There's a list of all the things of value points that people get from this. So I think that'll be helpful. So that was takeaway.
Yeah.
And then what's one other takeaway that you've had?
I got a lot to do.
It's true. Is it
So,
feeling overwhelming or is it okay?
Yeah, no, I mean it's like you do feel overwhelmed at times, but I think the challenge especially is like, where do I begin? Or you try to do a lot of things, but kind of refocus and say, okay, past is past. Okay, now let's start being a little more systematic about things.
And giving
Is
yourself some
probably
grace that you are just getting involved in this. Like, this isn't the people that we have to be careful not to compare ourselves too much, because if you hang around remodelers community, if you start to talk to some of your colleagues, or you're part of an HBA or an ARI group and you're like, wow, those guys got it all figured out. Comparison can be helpful sometimes, but a lot of times it also is disheartening. Dude, you're a couple years into this. You're already past the $500,000 mark. You've got your strategy of the type of work you want to take on. You're building out your team of employees and trade partners. You're asking the right questions. You're being brave and saying, Kyle, I'd love to talk to you about this. And you're learning some additional things about how you're charging and how you're presenting your things. And now you've got a next step on your sales process. So I think you got to realize, this is still very new, and you've come a long ways in a short amount of time. And if you just keep doing the next right thing, work on the next right thing, you're going to look up a year from now and be like, okay, I've got this checked off. What's next? And the fun thing about business is there's always going to be something that's next, but you're on you're on the right path, man.
Thank you.
You bet. All right. That's all the time we got for today. Everybody, thank you for listening to the Remodelers on the Rise podcast. If you want to leave a review for the podcast, if you go to wherever you're watching or listening to the podcast, in particular, if you go on Apple and leave a little review of the podcast and how lovely it is, that'd be wonderful. Pasi, thank you so much for taking the time and being willing to do this.
Yeah,
all right,
and
take care.
Thanks to the community. Their feedback is always awesome in there. So
excellent. Thanks so much.